extra day like this, government is supposed to help us with something so that we go take help ourselves too.
As challenging as the task may appear, the people involved look happy rendering these rare services. In Abuja, Shikiola Ikpenaye, NTA News.
The Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, has concluded arrangements to furnish and equip its ultra-modern network news studios within the shortest possible time. NTA Director General Shola Omole, in an interview, said this was one of the many decisions beneficial to Nigerians, reached after a successful meeting at the Star Times headquarters in Beijing.
There are a number of facilities that we have currently which we're not utilizing because our people just don't have the know-how to be able to do it. I'd like to correct that kind of a situation where if we're getting anything new, somebody from the ground level goes to study it and then comes back with it. And so our fluency level ought to be increasing on a day-to-day basis. You can change colors, you can change sets, you can do all kinds of things. But I also want to be careful not to push too much on people too quickly.
And now to health issues. Medical experts have identified improper management of high blood pressure, lack of physical exercises, as well as heavy smoking as likely causes of acute brain injuries, which ultimately leads to loss of memory. This was the submission of various neurologists at the second Wellington Annual Acute Brain Injury and Neurocritical Care Lecture held in Abuja.
The drugs that you're taking. There are a lot of toxic complications that are associated with self-medication. And brain is one organ that is highly susceptible to chemical poisoning.
Diet, exercise, stop smoking, make sure if you're hypertensive that is treated, if you're diabetic that is probably treated. And all of those things have to combine. If you have atherosclerotic disease as an individual or you have a family history, then your doctor has to decide if you need to be on medicine or if he can manage you without medicine.
Executive Secretary, Nigeria Christian Programs Commission, Mr. John Kennedy Okpara, says it is time for Nigerians to join hands with government to move the nation forward. Mr. Okpara said this while donating a mobile autoclave sterilizing equipment to the trauma center of the Abuja National Hospital. He noted that sitting on the fence is not the right option for any Nigerian who desires the good of the nation.
A few months back, I lost my father, and while passing through the hospitals, something touched me. I asked one of the nurses, what do you think is very dear and important to a hospital, especially a trauma center like this?
Nigerians in diaspora demonstrated their love and patriotism for their country as they turned out in their numbers to celebrate the country's 54th independence anniversary in London. 27 of the diasporans received the High Commissioner's Award at the ceremony held at the Abuja House of the Commission in London. The High Commissioner, Dr. Dalhatu Sarki Tafida, also received an award from them for being a great mentor to the over 2 million Nigerians living in the United Kingdom. Dr. Tafida says Nigeria has improved despite the challenges, lauding President Jonathan for their achievements.
I believe the sky is the limit if they can plow all these back to Nigeria, because Nigeria is doing very well in terms of economy. Our challenges in terms of security, I'm sure will be a thing of the past.
That's the main news on Good Morning Nigeria. It is back to Antonia and Ibrahim for the continuation of the program.
All right, many thanks, Ronke. You can take that sipping beverage I see by your side now, but we'll come back to you for the update in due course. For now, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Business is next after this time out.
Support
Tony, time we talk business now.
Okay, I guess on the business segment, experts comment on the Securities and Exchange Commission's plan to launch a 10-year capital market master plan to facilitate the growth of the Nigerian capital market. Details of business package with Seun Ogului.
It is another time to talk business on Early Business News. As the Securities and Exchange Commission plans to launch a 10-year capital market master plan to facilitate the growth of the Nigerian capital market, stakeholders in the industry have been commenting on the possible impact this development will have on the nation bourse. Dr. Uche Uwaleke is a finance and capital market expert. He shared his views on the Securities and Exchange Commission master plan with NTA Business News.
The initiative is highly commendable, but the only reservation I have is that we could have started with, say, a 5-year plan, a 5-year master plan, instead of saying a 10-year master plan from 2015 to 2025. One of the objectives is to key into the Vision 2020 of the federal government. So if we are keying into the Vision 2020 of the federal government, to me it stands to reason that we should start with a 5-year plan, say 2015 to 2019. Instead of having a 10-year planning horizon, the longer this planning horizon, the more the margin of error.
The master plan is designed to span 2015 to 2025. It is specifically aimed at increasing the depth of the capital market, increase foreign direct investment, and diversify sources of capital. We bring you details of that interview on our business program, The Portfolio, this Tuesday at 8 p.m. Still on the capital markets, in furtherance of the plans by West African Capital Market Integration, WACMI, to integrate stock markets in West Africa, the Nigerian Stock Exchange NSE has said it plans to support direct market access as an interim step to the implementation of sponsored access in West African stock market. According to a statement by the NSE, in Phase 1, brokers in WACMI member countries will now be able to trade securities and settle in markets other than theirs through local brokers in those domestic markets. The NSE said the main objective of the Phase 1 is to enable brokers that are not registered market operators in Nigeria to participate in the market by granting them remote access to the NSE's trading facility through a local dealing member firm. According to NSE, with DMA, a dealing member firm, sponsoring member, or SM, can allow a sponsored participant to submit an order to the trading system under the member firm's trading codes via the member firm's order management system, OMS. In the next sub-phase, sponsored access, unlike DMA, we allow a sponsored participant to submit order under a dealing member firm's trading codes to the trading system without passing through a member firm's order management systems. Chairman, WACMIC and Chief Executive Officer of the NSE, Mr. Oscar Onyema, said recently that the integration of the markets would speed up the development of the various domestic financial systems in the region. WACMIC saddled with a task of ensuring successful integration of the various stock exchanges in the West African sub-region. Onyema said achieving integration would enable momentous growth in region's market and would attract investment flows while creating a much larger market for local and international businesses. That's business. Thanks for watching.
Well, thanks, Seun. Up next is Newspaper Review.
Thank you for staying with us. Now let's look at the papers, and we have quite a number of them here. I've got 6 Tonya?
I think I have 5. Like yesterday, I think there was a positive newspapers. Today we have a daily of them.
11 of them, and we have in the studio Mr. Bayo Atobi to look at some of these newspapers. Mr. Atobi, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Good morning,
let's
Nigeria.
begin by looking at the Vanguard.
You didn't run through the number of papers you have?
Well, I have the Vanguard, I have the Daily Sun, I have the New Telegraph, I have the Nigerian Pilot, I have National Mirror, and then the Guardian.
That's quite a number. I have the Nation, the Daily News Watch, Daily Trust, Leadership, and the Union.
Well, it will look like 2 stories are dominating the newspapers, at least the ones I have here, Mr. Atobi. One story is that of another seizure of some money in South Africa, and then the fierce battle in Adama. But let's start with the Vanguard. I'll start from the bottom of the masthead there. 400 terrorists killed in fierce battle with Nigerian troops. That's on the front page of the Vanguard with details on page 8. And fresh arms deal. South Africa seizes another $5.7 million. Riders there. Both deals subject of criminal investigation, says South African authority. And South Africa frustrating Nigeria, says the security agencies. Now, this is most corrupt government Nigeria. That's according to the APC. Another story that 20 million Nigerians blind, Optometric Association. These are the leading stories on the front page of the Vanguard. Perhaps I should quickly take the Daily Sun as well. Fierce battle in Adamawa, 100 insurgent soldiers killed in fight of control of Michika and other villages. 7 feared beheaded by Boko Haram, and Jonathan meets neighboring countries' leaders for collaboration. The Daily Sun is also trailing that story. South Africa seizes another $5.7 million arms money from Nigeria. APC presidential ticket not zoned, says Oyegu, and that's on page 3.
Well, I guess before Mr. Atobi responds, I think we have some common trends in the newspaper today. Of course, the lead in the Nation is bad arms deal. Nigeria loses $5.7 million more to South Africa. Official blames 5th columnist. And then below, we have Boko Haram beheads 7 as troops kill hundreds. That story can be found on page 2. And military retakes Michika. Catholics, we've lost 154 parishes. Above the masthead, we have abandoned girl not from Chibok. Elder denies claim. That story can be found on page 6 of the Nation. And then, of course, you have some sports story. Travelers stranded in Yobe State, Keshi, Moses absence, big blow. And then, of course, on business, fake crude lifting order in town. People need to be beware. And then, of course, in relation to the oil industry, you have report on missing NNPC $10.8 billion ready soon. That story, I think, can be found on, I guess if you pick up the newspaper, you find it. But for now, it is on the front page of the Nation. So
yes, the leading stories are the successes of our soldiers in the Michika axis of the insurgents, the war against the insurgency. There are conflicting reports. Some newspapers put the death toll at 100, some say 400, some say 200. Sometimes I begin to wonder what is the number of insurgents we have. But be that as it may, apparently our soldiers are succeeding in sending them out of Michika and Baza. And apparently they have now gathered in Gulag, and that is the latest front for the war. The acting governor of Adamawa has actually congratulated the Nigerian soldiers in appreciation that they have now gotten rid of the 2 of their local governments they were occupying in that state. But related to that is in Cameroon, in northern area called Wambachi, 10 of these insurgents were also killed by Cameroonian gendarmes. You know, the insurgency has become a border thing between Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad. And in fact, that is why Mr. President is today joining his brother heads of state from Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Benin Republic. They are meeting under the auspices of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to review some of the strategies to tackle the insurgency. You will recall that sometime in June, there was a summit they held in France, and the concern was about tackling this insurgency that was destroying the whole initiative they have put in place. The Lake Chad Basin Commission was put together as far back as 1964, and it was meant to manage the water resources from the Lake Chad Basin. You recall that there's a big fish market from Maiduguri and that axis, and a lot of agricultural produce from there. But because of that insurgency, it has decimated all those agricultural activities. Related to that is the Chibok girl that was reported about a week ago that has been released. Now, the identity of the girl has been given, but it has been clear that she is not one of the 219 Chibok girls. She actually is from Mubi, and she has started asking about her family and her husbands. But up to now, she is very incoherent because of probably the trauma she has gone through. So those are the related incidences relating to the insurgency.
Well, let's look at the New Telegraph now. It is also talking about that arms deal on the front page, but I guess of interest would be why 2015 budget may be delayed. That's a story that is continued on page 4 of the Daily Telegraph. And then the pilot is also talking about APC ticket, pressure on Kwankwaso Atiku to step down. Udige Oyego accused of bias, and there's that story about the Michika killing, 200 insurgents killed. That's what the Nigerian pilot is saying. And federal government to release report on missing $10.8 billion oil money soon. That is on the front page of the Nigerian pilot. Tonia.
Yeah, on the Daily News Watch, like you did say, I think the big story today is a seizure of $5.7 million from Nigeria by South Africa. I think most of the newspapers have it on their headline. And then, of course, another read that might interest some other people out there is NNPC raises alarm over fake oil lifting approvals. I think I'd mentioned that that story was also in The Nation. But another interesting story on the front page of Daily News Watch is that the U.S. has okayed a drug for Ebola. In fact, the story reads that that drug has been considered to be the most effective to fight the Ebola virus, and it was only approved yesterday. So for those who are really interested, they may want to pick the Daily News Watch to read more on that story.
Mr. Atoebi, you might want to talk about this. NNPC raises alarm over fake crude oil letters, and that's coming not at a time that we had thought. And then there is this other story on page 12. It's heading somewhere on page 12 of the National Mirror. 10 die in Borno due to cholera outbreak.
Well, there's been incidences of reports of cholera outbreak and measles, particularly where you have the internally displaced persons, where they are people who are running away from the insurgency. It was reported, I think, about a week ago, but the death toll is going down because apparently control has been taken of it. It was higher in the early stages of the report. But let me quickly talk about the report from South Africa. A second 5.7 million apparently has been seized. And again, it is related to an arms deal. But this one is different from the earlier one. This one is a legitimate arms deal by a Nigerian company with a South African company. However, and the money was transferred through the banking system, in fact, through, I think it was a national bank, to South Africa. However, the indigenous company in South Africa, by the time it received its funds, its license to continue for procure military hardware had expired. So it had a problem. It could not carry out the transaction. So it now went back to the bank, trying to pay the money back to the Nigerian company. And that is where you have the National Prosecution Authority now found that quantum of money being moved. And in their country there, if you are going in, you cannot take more than $2,300. So they raised an alarm and they are inquiring about that. But even the earlier one that was associated with 9.3 million, even at the point where it was impounded, as improper as the process was, and even at the point where it was impounded, it was identified that there were vouchers for helicopter gunship, for drone aircrafts, for ammunitions and rocket launchers. That was the basis for the purchase of those equipment. But that does not gainsay the fact that the process that was used was a little bit untidy.
All right.
Well, I think from the Daily Trust, like we said, the trending story today is the seizure of money from Nigeria for arms. And then, of course, another major headline on Daily Trust today is immigration victims yet to get federal government jobs. That I'm sure that some people will be wondering what is up. And then For the major story, the Daily Trust decided to go graphic. You'll see the pictures or the graphs of what happened in September, what has happened in October, and it might, if you're interested, you may want to pick up the Daily Trust to read more about that.
Well, for me here, the last paper is the Guardian newspaper, and its lead story is also South Africa seizes fresh, converted theirs to Naira and comes down to 952 million Naira cash for arms from Nigeria. Deal is legal, weapons are to check insurgency, says government. NERIC to monitor use of CBN's $213 billion intervention fund. Well, the rider there begins public hearing to pay PHCN's $14 billion gas debt money. That's the lead story there.
And then from the leadership, like we did say, for at least for a change, that big story is troops reclaim Michika, kill 100 Boko Haram. That story can be found on page 5. And below it, Jonathan in Niger Republic for solution. Another story as NAF acquires more aircraft. And then, of course, the picture story, you see one little boy having fun during Salah. And interestingly enough, if you think he's trying to climb Mount Everest, you may have to take a second look. The interesting is that the boy is climbing a plastic rock at the Wonderland Park in Abuja yesterday. Children can always have fun whenever they want to. And then, of course, on a sad note, they have a story, Shetima Nupe, Makama Mina passes on. That's rather on a sad note.
That's a sad one. I think the Makama Nupe was one time Secretary to the Government of Secretary to the Government at the federal level. Yes, may his soul rest in peace. The other interesting story Antonia read relates to job. And in fact, there are two stories about job. One is saying that the Center for International Private Sector Enterprise in Nigeria has come out with data that says that 80% of people employed in Nigeria are in the private sector. It's only 20% that is employed in the private sector. And they use Lagos as an example, that Lagos has a population of about 18 million and only 555,000 are employed in the public sector. And all the hustling and bustling in Lagos account for it as the hub of Nigerian economy there is all carried out by the private sector. Also related to the job, I think some papers are still happening on the development in Edo State, where the governor has made an executive proclamation that henceforth it shall be 60 years for anybody who is engaged in public service work, and no longer 35 years service is no longer necessary. Some of the civil servants are jubilating, but if you look at it on the continuum, comparatively, anybody who gets out of school and ready for employment will be about age 21, 20, and therefore what they have gained is a matter of about between 4 and 5 years, because if you add that age 19 to the 35 years, it clearly brings you to very close to that age 60, and the difference there is only about a matter of 4 or 5 years. So the change there has provided an additional 4 or 5 years for the public servants in Edo State. Related to that, I think, is the issue of the Boko Haram. Related to Salah, the chairman of the South-South and Southeast Northerners Forum has appealed to Mr. President and also the army authorities to please, in the spirit of Salah, spare the lives of the 12 soldiers that were condemned to mutiny. And sometimes, even in the electronic media, the interactive session you hear on the media, the last time some insurgents surrendered, they were appealed by some of the insurgents for clemency. But their soldiers who were fighting the insurgents unfortunately found themselves on the side of mutiny, and that they are now on death row. I begin to see some kind of irony there, and therefore I think there is a need to look compassionately at that. But that notwithstanding, mutiny is a very critical challenge in the military, and they don't take it very lightly, and therefore they usually will want to stem it right in the tide so that it doesn't undermine gallantry and commitment. Antonia read a story about Ebola, about a new drug.
Yes.
Yes, the new drug is called brain coding Tenofovir. It is expected that after it is being used on monkeys and apes, they recover very quickly from Ebola. So they are now trying to use it to tackle the Ebola incidents in Dallas and Nebraska, currently raving in America. But there is another one that is called...
They need to send that to West Africa so very quickly, because the death toll is rising on a day-to-day basis. We need it so badly, especially, I think, is it Liberia? Where did you say you? Sierra Leone. The
yes,
numbers
you're right.
are...
Sierra Leone alone, within one day, 121 people died from Ebola, and it is very grave. Unfortunately, some of the ZMAP they sent to Liberia had already run out. This ZMAP is a small company in America, and in fact, at the time they were doing, they have very limited doses available. And it has now been revealed, in fact, that Ken Bradley, who left Liberia and was cured of Ebola, was actually not treated with ZMAP. He was treated with this TKM drug. But the frightening development so far is another virus called Marburg, and that one is ravaging now in Uganda. It is also a hemorrhagic fever virus, very similar to Ebola. You know, dengue fever, Lassa fever, Ebola fever, and now Marburg, they are all hemorrhagic fevers. But this one is also dangerous than Ebola, because Ebola has 21 days incubation period. This Marburg has 14 days incubation period.
Wow, all these deadly diseases, Africa so common, or is it prone to Africa? Or why are we so prone to these deadly diseases?
Apparently, they are all related to the primates, the monkeys, the baboons, and you know, particularly even the first Ebola came in 1976, and that was in the Congo. And in the Congo is the thick forest belt of the African continent, the mid-equatorial area there.
Well, we have this kind of thick forest in Brazil, and we are not hearing of, they too share the kind of forest.
Tropical climate that we have.
And then when you talk of the Amazon forest.
I'm sure if the Brazilians hear you, they won't say, look, don't talk about bringing the dead today.
All right, Mr. Achebe, we've got to stop you now. We have issues to discuss the gospel program. Thank you for coming as usual and for your insight on the topic the newspapers are looking at today.
Thank you very much for
having me. Have a great day. This is Good Morning Nigeria. When we come back, we begin to look at that issue in Kenya. Stay with us.
Matter with you, little Mary.
She's not sleeping well, doctor.
And how is she feeding?
She's got a good appetite.
Then maybe it's her diaper making her wet.
But a diaper doesn't leak.
It's not only about leakage. A diaper can feel dry on the outside but could still be wet inside.
That could be why she doesn't sleep well.
That's why Pampers, because they keep your baby dry. Pampers locks wetness away from your baby's skin. With Pampers, you'll sleep peacefully, so she'll be ready to shine every morning.
Endorsed by Pediatric Association of Nigeria.
54 years ago, the pride of Africa was born. 54 years ago, the trigger of Africa was born. 54 years ago, the most populous black nation was born. 54 years ago, the giant of Africa was born. 54 years ago, Africa's largest economy was born. 54 years ago, Nigeria was born. Happy birthday, Nigeria, on her 54th Independence Day anniversary celebration.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. Down for One Vision, Nigeria.
Uhuru Kenyatta, who has been charged with inciting violence after the 2007 vote in his country, on Monday said he would attend a hearing at the International Criminal Court this week, precisely tomorrow, Wednesday. Now, he is going down in record as the first sitting world leader to appear in the Hague-based court. He is, however, saying he would be going there in his personal capacity and not as president. Now, Gideon Ifade in this report sets the tone for our discussion this morning.
The International Criminal Court, ICC, is a permanent judicial body established in 1998 to prosecute and adjudicate individuals accused of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The court began sitting on July 4, 2002, after the requisite number of countries ratified the agreement. The International Criminal Court was established as a court of last resort to prosecute the most heinous offenses in cases where national courts failed to act. The court opened its first case in September 2009, prosecuting Congolese warlord Thomas Lubanga Diallo, who was found guilty of all charges as of March 14, 2012, and imposed a 14-year prison sentence. In May 2007, the court issued warrant of arrest for a government minister and a militia leader in Sudan for their roles in war crimes. It issued a similar warrant in March 2009 for Sudanese President Omar Hassan Ahmad al-Bashir, which is the fourth time the court sought the arrest of a sitting head of state. President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya is, however, said to be the fourth sitting president to appear before the International Criminal Court. The president, who is being accused of crime against humanity while appearing before the country's parliament, says he is ready to appear before the International Criminal Court as an individual and not as a president of Kenya, and agreeing to appoint his deputy, William Ruto, to take charge during his absence. This, he says, is not to compromise the sovereignty of Kenya's 40 million people. What is the implication of this action? This is the question public analysts are asking. And that could this confidence arise from the conviction that he is innocent of the crime he is accused of? Or could it be as a result of an undisclosed pressure? Or is he willingly submitting himself to face the consequences of his alleged crime? These are some of the questions our guest will provide answers to. Good morning, Nigeria.
Well, thank you, Jide, for that background report. And then joining us in the studio right now is Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Foreign Affairs Ministry, Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of Nigeria at The Hague, Netherlands. Ambassador Keshi, you're most welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and nice to see you again.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So before you came on there, we were asking you, what do you make of President Kenyatta submitting himself to the ICC?
I think for a start, I think it's a good thing both for him and for Kenya. It demonstrates his commitment to the rule of law and his desire to have this case put behind him as quickly as he can. So I think for a start is good. But I also believe that he did this because he's confident that at the end of the day, the case might actually be thrown out, because most of those who initially were prepared to give evidence are now recounting their stories. Some are not even interested in appearing before the court. So things seem to be looking good for the president.
Having served as a career diplomat in the highest level of government, you do have a profound understanding of these issues. Now, he is saying he's going to attend, or rather, appear in this court in his personal capacity and not as a president. What does this mean?
Well, he would have become the first sitting president to appear, before the court. I believe that he wants to avoid that notation in history as the first president to appear, before the court. And secondly, I think he does not want to create a situation whereby the president of a whole country would be on trial. So at the time, should the case go in trial, because this is a status hearing actually, should the case go on trial, I think he wants to avoid that possibility of everybody looking at the president of a nation being on trial for crime against humanity.
Okay, you did say that many people, that the president is confident that he may get away, and that many people are recounting their stories or withdrawing their stories, and many more are not even interested in pursuing the case. Is it because of the fact that he is their president and they're all trying to do whatever they can to support their president and their country?
It's possible. First, let's go back and remember that this occurred in 2007, I believe. Yeah, following the 2007 election, and it is said that he's alleged that he was one of those who helped to create the violence that ensued after the election. Since then, a couple of things have occurred. First, You remember that when he was running, there was a lot of international condemnation that he should not even be allowed to stand, by the Western world and the rest of it. And they actually threatened to impose sanctions. Since he became president, things have changed. For example, the president of the United States has visited. President Kenyatta's relationship with the rest of Europe is better than it was when he took over office. So things are looking good for the president. And as I said, the court actually some time ago, I think, admonished the prosecutor that, look, this case was flattering. So I think put all together, I believe that the president took the decision he made last month on Monday that the best thing to do was go attend the status hearing and see how we can put the whole thing behind and free Kenya from the possible, focus of a leader who has committed crime against humanity and the possibility of sanctions if he had refused to attend.
Oh, sorry, Adrian. What about if the case goes the other way?
Well, that would be an interesting thing to see. But when you recall that initially he was very vehement against, attending, and then they made a deal whereby his vice president had actually gone and returned. Then he said he asked to participate by video, and they refused. So I guess he decided to submit himself. And I'm sure when he gets back, he's going to portray Kenya as a nation that believes in the rule of law if the president can't step down and go and attend a status hearing in a law court.
Ambassador Keshi, this case, the entire trial is infuriating to a lot of people because, like they say, the allegation hasn't gone yet. It would appear the ICC at all times is only targeting leaders from the African continent, third world leaders. They have a genuine case to be saying this, don't they?
Well, to some extent. But you would also recall that on this your program, I had actually taken that position too, that, it would appear as if this is targeted against third world countries. Because when you look at the list of those who have appeared before, they are, presidents or former presidents from third world countries. And yet, there are those who also call that some other presidents from some superpower countries should be there for the same crime against humanity, but nobody has taken up that. But bear in mind that quite often when these cases occur, it is the people themselves, the people, the opposition leaders, and human rights activists in some of these countries, of course, that take some of these cases to, to court. I'm sure you are familiar that oftentimes Nigerians themselves even take some cases, they appeal to the United Nations, they call upon the court to arrest somebody here and try the fellow. So it's partly we who are to blame. Maybe it could also be said that we are taking this position because we have no confidence, full confidence in our own legal system.
So some would say, Ambassador, that we're just playing out a script here, that we're being used perhaps by the superpowers, whom, again, some people are alleging that they use the ICC very often, but they in fact are not signatories to the treaty that set it up.
Well, bear in mind that we signed to these treaties. So you can't sign a document and denounce it the next day. And this is where sometimes I blame our ability to negotiate. If those who came up with this, said they were not going to sign, and we went ahead and signed, you don't blame them. I always say this, that we have a poor negotiating skills. And so sometimes you find that a number of these international agreements are screwed against third world countries. And that's because our delegates quite often don't pay attention to some of these details. So I go back to what I said before. You cannot go to an international conference, sign up a document, and then the next day you turn around and denounce it, that it's only against one part of the globe and not the rest. Were you sleeping when this document was being prepared? No, you were not. You probably were not in the hall, but at the end of the day, you signed. So the answer is our officials should pay closer attention to some of these negotiations. And if they do not have the skills and the expertise, do what the rest of the world do. Employ experts to help you out, period.
Okay, so with what is happening now, what should African countries, what message is this passing to other African leaders?
Well, a couple of messages, but first remember that the AU had actually denounced this, and they had actually granted immunity to any sitting president, you know. But again, if you grant an immunity to a sitting president, you're also saying that when he steps down from office, he could be arrested and he could be, you know, he could be tried. But at the end of the day, I think what this should make us do, African leaders, is to ensure that, you know, we rule according to the rule of law, and that we do not create situations where, you know, we find or they find themselves embarrassed, you know, on leaving office. There's so many African leaders who have left office. You no longer hear of them. Nobody's harassing them and the rest. And I think that's a cue for those who are leaders of the continent today.
When he said he's going to appear personally in his personal capacity and not as president, Uhuru is saying he's going to hand over to his deputy. You know, what possible scenarios could play out in his absence? Do you foresee any?
No, not at all. I think these guys have built a very good relationship. The constitution is very clear. I'm sorry to say, you know, I always say that it's only probably in a country like ours that we create all kinds of scenarios, you know, for political reasons. But it's very clear, you know, the president is leaving the country to face, I mean, whether on a visit or something like that, you know, you hand over to your second in command. And when he returns back, you know, you hand over back to him. You remember very well a good case, where, you know, a very good example, when President Reagan was shot some few years ago, and on his way to the hospital for surgery, he actually signed, you know, handing over power to his vice president, the older George Bush, should in case he dies in, you know, on the surgery room, you know, America still has a president in office. So these things are, you know, clearly defined in most constitutions.
I'd asked you earlier that if the case goes the other way, if by any reason or by any chance it's found guilty, I don't think you actually answered that question properly.
Well, let me make this.
What is going to happen to Kenya?
No, nothing will happen to Kenya as a nation. You know, it will just be sad. It will just be unfortunate. But I want to make this prediction that given the length of time it takes for these cases to, you know, this case is probably going to run out, you know, for quite some time. And it might not actually come to full trial, you know, maybe till he leaves office, you know. But for now, look, I say this. If the president is not confident that at the end of the day this case will be thrown out, I'm not sure he would have attended this status hearing.
But is there any room for appeal if it goes the other way, like I said?
No, he can, but I don't think that that makes much difference. It's still the same court. There's no higher court than the ICC.
His father, late Jomo Kenyatta, we recall, was also tried by Britain, especially during the fight for independence struggle. Is Ambassador Keshi drawing a link between what is happening to his son now and what happened to the father?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. This situation he finds himself arose as a result of the violence, you know, that took place after the 2007 general election, which he contested or was a candidate at that, you know, at that time. So there are two clearly distinct, you know, cases. His father was the leader of a group that fought for independence, and you know what it used to be then under colonial rule, you know. So I think we should make that clear distinction that there are no correlation between the two.
Do we foresee more, like you said earlier, do we foresee many of these activists challenging their government and going to this level when they are not satisfied with what is happening in their home country?
Yes, I think we should. When you find activists dissatisfied with the legal, you know, with the legal system, and also bear in mind, particularly in our own case in Nigeria, you know, the activists, I regret to say, have also become very political and very partisan the way they look at some of these issues. I think that the Nigerian legal system, for example, or the legal system in Africa, you know, we need to probably build it up in a way that citizens can have confidence that if they go to the court of law, they will get justice. And it is because they do not perceive that they will get justice that they believe they can go to a higher authority outside the country. And the ICC provides them that platform to seek redress if they think they are not getting a good deal in their own countries.
With the level of discontent by some countries with the turnout of event at the ICC, there is a temptation to perhaps say, okay, I'm withdrawing from the treaty, I'm no longer part of it. Should this happen, what would be the consequence?
Well, so far it has not happened. We've been.
But is it possible to happen?
Yeah, no, you could withdraw from being a member, a signatory to the, but what impact will it make at this time? Look, the court is working. Never mind that it's focused on African leaders. The court is working. So if you withdraw, maybe one country decides to withdraw, and I'm surprised. Well, again, this is a very good question because at the time the AU looked at this, there were considerable voices that suggested that Africa should withdraw from being a signatory to, but they didn't go that far. I guess because they also consider the international implication of such an action. So at the end of the day, I make the point that I think it's good the president decided to attend the status hearing. And let's just hope that at the worst scenario, as you keep saying, is that it could go the other way. But I think that because things are looking good for him, if the people who accuse you are not ready to appear before the court, if your relationship with the global community is improving, the President of the United States has visited. He was at the United Nations recently to address the UN General Assembly. I don't perceive that, some of the countries who were vehemently against him when he assumed office are still in that mind. I think things have toned down a little bit, and at the end of the day, they're going to find a way to work out something.
Well, I guess this is a developing story. We'll keep a tab on it and see how it goes.
This skepticism about ICC, what has it done to its credibility? When you have, a sizable proportion of members, being dissatisfied, being accusing the ICC of targeting only a particular group of leaders, what does it do to its credibility?
So far, nothing. Again, because some have expressed some joy. Look, some of the leaders of old Yugoslavia, who were tried there, at least the people are happy that at last, if they did not get justice at home, they got justice somewhere else. Their leaders are today behind bars. I'm sure a couple of Liberians will tell you that they are happy at last they took away Taylor, and never mind the Ebola crisis, that Liberia is far, far better off without Taylor. So in a way, there's a sort of balance. There are those who are dissatisfied, and there are those who will tell you that, but for the ICC, we'll probably be in a worse situation than we were years ago.
You did say that the trial is going to be long drawn. Why is it going to be so?
Look, this thing happened in 2007, and this is 7 years or so, after it's still on. And I guess it's still going to be on for a while because it started now. This is a status hearing. The real trial hasn't started. They are going to listen to him and weigh this against the evidence they have. And if the people are not ready to, and they can't find anybody to testify, or the case is not strong, at the end of the day, they might just drop it. Or, they are aware of the fact. Look, the ICC itself is aware of the fact that this is a sitting president. So they are aware of all the possible obstacles on the way. And they are going to be very careful and steadfast in trying to, adjudicate this case.
Is this going to take away anything from governance in Kenya? Though his vice has stepped in, but it's never the same. No, so is it going to take anything away from governance?
I don't think so. I don't think so, I think the president has a policy that the government is committed to. So if he's away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I don't think the policy is going to be a drastic change of policy within the next 2-3 weeks, except there's some global or dramatic changes that will require a refocus or a re-strategy of Kenya's policy, particularly the economic policy, which is, by the way, Kenya has been very well today. So I just guess that again I make the point that everything seems to be, for now, in favor of the president.
All right, Ambassador, we'll come back to round this up. Let's quickly rejoin Ronke in our newsroom to give us the news update.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Here is a look at some of the top stories. President Goodluck Jonathan will undertake a one-day official visit to Niamey, Niger Republic today, Tuesday, to participate in an extraordinary summit of heads of state and governments of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. The president and other participating heads of state and governments are expected to review ongoing collaboration against terrorism and insurgency within and across their national boundaries. The Sheikh of Borno, Alhaji Abubakar Ibn Umar El-Kanemi, says what the people of Borno need now is a peaceful process of democracy and advised the people to join hands in support of government to achieve their objective. Medical experts have identified improper management of high blood pressure, lack of physical exercises, as well as heavy smoking as likely causes of acute brain injuries, which ultimately leads to loss of memory. This was the submission of various neurologists at the second Wellington Annual Acute Brain Injury and Neurocritical Care Lecture held in Abuja. Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Christian Programs Commission, Mr. John Kennedy Okwara, says it is time for Nigerians to join hands with government to move the nation forward. Mr. Okwara said this while donating a mobile autoclave sterilizing equipment to the trauma center of the Abuja National Hospital. He noted that sitting on the fence is not the right option for any Nigerian who desires the good of the nation. That's the news bullet for now. It is back to Tony and Ibrahim.
And we're at that point where we would perhaps just round off this conversation. But then what we do know now for sure is that the man, Uhuru Kenyatta, not the president now, will be going to The Hague tomorrow, Wednesday. I'm sure fallout from that trial would be subject for another conversation. I hope to bring you back here to talk some more when that happens.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank you for finding time to join us this morning.
Thanks very much. Nice to see you again.
We've been speaking with Ambassador Joe Kirshi. He was a charge d'affaires at the Embassy of Nigeria in The Hague, Netherlands, where the ICC is, and of course a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll be talking another issue, but here on Good Morning Nigeria.
Shopee has ensured the reconstruction of the Abuja-Lokoja Road and the East-West Road in Port Harcourt.
The standard gauge rail tracks from Abuja to Kaduna and Lagos to Kano indicate that our trains are coming back.
The second Niger Bridge in the southeast and the local Oweto Bridge in the north-central are in progress, thanks to Shopee.
Shopee's mass transit program has made transportation easier for Nigerians.
Shopee has rehabilitated over 1,000 health centers across Nigeria.
Shopee has provided mama kits to pregnant women, and polio is on the verge of eradication.
Shopee has also ensured the provision of social amenities, and through its various training programs for young people, guarantees a better future.
Shopee, delivering service with integrity.
Nigeria, we the people decree that the power of evil secrecy shall fail.
All Nigerians should understand that a divided Nigeria can only mean catastrophic consequences for the entire black race.
We all African countries count on you, and you're our beacon of hope.
That when Nigeria sneezes, all of us will catch cold.
All of us who look to Nigeria for lessons and inspiration never cease to thank God for this wonderful gift to Africa.
Nigeria enjoys the respect, the admiration, the friendship, and the hope of an entire continent.
The powerhouse of Africa.
Nigeria.
Unite and build Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria.
A message from protectors of Nigerian posterity.
Well, if you're just joining us, the program is still Good Morning Nigeria, a nation of a nation. And of course, to continue that discourse, we have in the studio with us Reverend Father George Heusani. He is a priest of the Catholic Church, a writer, a poet, a musician, and human rights activist. He's also a social commentator. And today we are going to look at leadership from the religious end.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
I think it would be very apt if we begin by getting your view. When you ask so many people, they have different things to say as far as assessing Nigeria's leadership, trend has been in the last 54 years. What is your assessment of, what we've achieved so far?
I think we could have done a lot better. That's the way to put it. We could have done a lot better. Nigeria has been bestowed by God with enormous resources, human and material. And looking back at 54 years, I have heard a lot of people say we have done so well. We've not done too badly. And I say, are you comparing Nigeria with Mali? Are you comparing Nigeria with Somalia? Just look at the resources Nigeria is sitting on, human and material. Then those who say we have done so well should have a rethink. Because when you look at Nigeria, where we are after 54 years, I would ask people to look at Malaysia rather than look at maybe Mali or Togo or Somalia. Look at Malaysia. Look at the people that we were about the same level by 1960. Look at Singapore. Oh, people say, look at Indonesia. Because when people say, oh, Nigeria is very complex, look at Indonesia. Even Malaysia, they're a mixture of various groups. And I think we could have done a lot better, given the resources that we are sitting on. Our people deserve a lot better quality leadership.
Okay, let me quickly chip this in. Let's go back and see where we perhaps got it wrong. The first 6 years after independence, when we had the first set of nationalists and they became our leaders, the agreement among many people is that they did very well at that time. So if you agree that they did very well, at what point did we derail?
Wait a minute. They did very well to some point because Nigeria failed to raise national leaders at that time. I hope you know that what we had were fantastic regional leaders. We never came up with a national leader. Countries that made it, they ended up having a national leader at some point, and that national leader galvanized what came to be a sense of national cohesion. We had Azikiwe, and a hero recognized by all Easterners. We had Awolowo, a hero recognized by all Westerners. And we had Sardauna, recognized by all Northerners. But we never had one person recognized by Easterners, Northerners, and Westerners together. Now, that is one of our problems. They did so well, but they never succeeded in building that sense of national cohesion that you can now say, oh, this is our founding father. We don't have a founding father. We have founding fathers and mothers. And if you look at the United States, you can talk of George Washington. If you look at Italy, you can talk of Garibaldi. If you think about Germany, you can talk of Bismarck. You have, people who helped to unite the disparate groups in their societies. We were not blessed with that. So even the first 6 years where we say these people were rather selfless, they worked very hard, they did not enrich themselves, a lot of positive things, but where they failed, as far as I'm concerned, is that they were regional leaders at best. I don't consider them national leaders because they were heroes. Their people acclaim them as heroes, but the other people could not see them as their heroes. So that's the problem that we had from the first generation.
So was that the beginning of the challenge we have in terms of
Yes, because
leadership?
part of building a nation is forging a sense of national cohesion, especially for a people like our own where you have disparate groups, 250 at least ethnic nationalities. The first assignment in building a nation of these disparate groups is forging a sense of national cohesion. Till today, we still don't have that. We don't have a sense of national cohesion. Look at the last national conference. People are calling for more local governments, more states, because people still have a sense that I don't belong. And I don't belong. You don't build a nation that way until a leader emerges in Nigeria who, in himself or herself, encapsulates a set of values within himself or herself, encapsulates a set of values that all of us look up to and we can identify with. And it doesn't matter which part of the country he comes out of. We are still at a time talking about zoning and talking about it's your turn, it's not your turn. We have not built that sense of Nigeria. We have Igbos and Ishekiris and Yorubas and Hausas. We really don't have many Nigerians. And it is leadership that builds that, If you look at the history of the world, it is leaders that forge that sense. We used to talk about the barbarians. Most of present-day Europe, they were called barbarians, warring groups, killing themselves all over the place. But some leaders emerged that built the modern Germany, that built the modern Italy, that built the... So we require to raise such quality of leaders that are self-sacrificing, prepared to die in this process. And by the grace of God, they will not die, but they first of all have to have that sense of national.
Now, raising brings us to the point of recruitment of leadership. Some people would say it's something that requires deliberate efforts, deliberate attempt, to be able to raise that kind of leader that we so desire. What should we be doing? How do we get around this?
We took it for granted that leaders are born.
But leaders are born, aren't they?
Leaders, the extent of being born is very small compared to being built. Leaders are raised. You do have perhaps 40% of nature, but 60% is more of nurture, to nurture people to become leaders. And we need to, first of all, we need to create the environment that leaders can emerge. And then leaders will emerge when we make it a deliberate project to raise leaders. And okay, in nursery school, in primary school, you can already identify some children that have some leadership qualities. But that's not enough. You need to build them up. In this society, your father is rich, then you want to go to the Senate, you want to go to the House of Rep because you have a lot of money. That doesn't make a leader. To have a lot of money doesn't make a leader. What makes leaders a sense of sacrifice, a high sense of nationalism or patriotism, a high sense of the common good, a high sense of commitment to the task, diligence and commitment. There is so much indiscipline in this society. And some of our leaders are the most indisciplined people in this society. I mean, when you look at traffic and see the people who are supposed to be responsible to make traffic flow for the ordinary citizen. So if your brother needs to be rushed to the hospital, the people who are supposed to make sure that the traffic is free, they are the ones who will keep us in traffic and ride roughshod with sirens and bulalas and gun-toting police. So that's not leadership. We are in an environment that people don't even understand what is leadership anymore. And some of us are involved in the project of leadership. Some of us have set up leadership institutes to see how, if this thing does not happen in my lifetime, let me see that I'm beginning to do something so that in the lifetime of the children coming, we may have a better concept of leadership.
Okay, so Father, for those of you who are into forming or creating
training for leadership,
what are the kind of values you are imparting on these young ones that when they get to that opportunity, we are going to be
from the very early stage, and I mean from primary school, and even before primary school, from the home. Things like a sense of sacrifice. Nigerians don't know how to wait for another. You see the way we drive in traffic. Everybody, can have 6 lanes going where 1 lane is supposed to be going because no one would want. The mother and the father need to start training children to wait for others. No, to step back. In this society, it's a new thing for us to learn. Another person is going to enter the same door for you to step back for another person to go first, even if you arrive there first. Now, we need to start teaching our children to consider the other person first before yourself. For us Christians, it's actually a source of serious contradiction Because we say we are Christians, but look at what Jesus says. Look at what he says in Matthew chapter 18. When James and John were struggling for who is, when they saw James and John and they were struggling who is the greatest, and Jesus Christ brought a child. The greatest among you must be like this child. The greatest among you must be the one who serves. Luke chapter 9 and Matthew chapter 18. Service, the sense of service. Service for selfless service, not for the reward you get out of it, but actually that you can see the other person being better. You know, they say the way leaders are trained and nurtured. When you plant trees whose fruits you know you will never eat out of, then leadership is emerging. When people plant trees that they know that in their lifetime those trees will not bear fruits that they will eat out of. Our leaders plant pawpaw that they can harvest the following year. But we are looking for people who will plant oak trees. People who will plant the kind of trees that it takes 100, 200 years to bear fruits, to mature.
Reverend Father, your invitation on this program is deliberate because we're looking at the religious perspective to all this now. Yeah. Now, Nigeria, without a doubt, very religious people, if you ask me. And I know both religions, they have enshrined values as to what leadership should be like. Would it be a failure on the part of, perhaps, say, in your own case, the clergy for not being able to, talk to
Well, it is a failure to some extent because, you see, I am also a teacher, and I know that when you teach a particular class continuously a lesson, and the class continues to fail, it's either that they are all idiots or the teacher needs to look at his methods. So it may be a failure of methodology. But one of the things I have come to recognize in recent times is that the average Nigerian does not live his life according to the tenets of his religion. True. The average Nigerian Christian, when he makes political decisions, is not thinking of Jesus Christ. The average Nigerian Muslim is often not thinking of the best injunctions of the Quran or the Hadith. Many people, we say we are religious people, but often it is lip service because it is very clear. And from the age of 4, 5, 6, the children begin to hear it drummed in church. Leadership as shepherding, leadership as stewardship, leadership as service. Jesus Christ stooped down to wash the feet of his disciples, and he says, go and follow my example. Now, what else do people need to hear? Now, however, I can also mention some of the failures of we religious leaders. Now, if you read all these, and the people see you living like a lord, while they are struggling to eke a living, some destitute quality of life, and they see their religious leaders living like lords, then it is not an example of leadership. Jesus gave us a clear example of leadership by service and sacrifice. Jesus Christ is honored and adored and glorified today because he accepted to die death on the cross. As we read in Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 to 11, his state was divine, but he did not count to his equality. He emptied himself and accepted to die a shameful death. That's why God glorified him. Now, if leaders live that way, rather than flying private jets around, if leaders live that way rather than live in mansions while the people who contribute that money are living destitute quality of life, then leaders will not only be teaching with words, they will be matching their words with good example. But beyond that is to say, a lot of the other people, apart from the clergy, they know these things, they read the Bible, but when they make their choices, they don't use the gospel of Christ to make their choices. That's the problem.
Okay, Father, in some climes where they are not so much into religion, like Adra said, that we are very religious people. But when you look at their quality, the quality of leadership in those countries, you agree that these are quality leaders. We that are religious, and we are supposed to follow the tenets of about the Islam and the Christian faith. But at the end of the day, like you have rightly pointed out, many of our leaders don't remember their religion when they are in leadership. So what are the people in these other climes doing who are not even as religious as we are, that we are not doing, or we should be learning?
Let me make a distinction here between authentic religious living and the politics of religion. We have people going around with who are just proclaiming the politics of religion. I am a Catholic, I am a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I belong to this and that. And, you know, in our country, it is fashionable to belong, so almost like belonging to a social club, but it does not affect the core person. You know, the gospel of Jesus Christ is the most potent transforming agent in the world. I mean, 12 people, when he transformed those 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, they changed Europe. Now, coming back to your question, if countries of Europe have a sense of good leadership, a sense of the common good, a sense of service, part of it they got from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Part of it they got from long years of the practice of the tenets that they got from the example of Jesus and his disciples. As you know, if you look at the League of Nations and the ideals behind the League of Nations that later became the United Nations, check them. Many of them can be traced to gospel values about the dignity of the human being, about the priority of the common good over individual good and group good. Now, what has happened in our own society is that these have remained ideas. They have remained ideas. They have not been domesticated into structures. You see, when things remain as ideas, so when people do not bring down to the level of structures, what has happened in Europe is that a lot of those ideas have been put into structures. For example, how you take care of unemployed people. It has been put into structures. Taking care of widows. It has been taking care of old people. It has been put into structures. Our own, they remain ideas. And until people begin to say, these wonderful religious ideas that we celebrate every Sunday in church, that we read in the Bible, how do we put them into structures that will affect our living? It's like I say to people, until you domesticate properly and put into structures the right, the fundamental right to life, how do you tell me that I have a fundamental right, inalienable right to life, when I cannot sue any authority if I have no food to eat? If I don't have the means to sustain life, how do you tell me I have the fundamental right to life?
Let's look at this other issue. Like I did say, we're religious people, even though you're putting a question mark on that now.
In quote.
But we listen to our religious leaders. Time was when they call and they talk to you, you listen. But over time, what we've seen is clergies, imams, hobnobbing with the politicians, and perhaps because of pecuniary interest, what that has happened is that they no longer are able to call them if they err.
Wonderful. I mean, that is very correct, and that has been my position, that whenever the emperor and the clergy or the pulpit, whenever they become one, Cardinal Onaikwon used to say, then we know who is husband. When there is an unholy marriage between the emperor and the bishop or the priest, we know who is the husband. Often, the emperor becomes the husband. And the priest, the pastor, is not able to do his prophetic work. That is why you require a little bit of a distance. A safe distance between the emperor and the person who is supposed to be the priest or the imam, so that he or she will be able to perform their role of being prophetic, of calling them to order. But when the person who is a priest, who is a pastor, who is an imam, depends on the emperor for his daily bread.
Tony, let me cut in here, and perhaps as a way out, without a common vision, the Nigerian project could be doomed for failure even before it takes off. For where there is no vision, the people do perish. Now, this is your submission.
Yes.
Could this be linked to the failure in leadership in this country? And how do we get out of the woods?
Clearly, I mean, a lot of our problems in this country is on account of leadership. I mean, I tell people that our problem in this country, number one, is leadership. Number two is leadership. Number three is leadership. I mean, a lot of people don't agree with me. They say, oh, what about followership? The followership and so on. I say, you know what? Where the leader goes, they say when the head is rotten, the head of the fish is rotten, the whole system is rotten. I look forward to a time at all levels, and when I speak of leadership, I don't just mean the national leader. I look forward to leaders in this country who, in their spheres of influence, will insist on certain things. I was parish priest, Church of the Assumption, Asokoro here, for 5 years. And I insisted when I start mass, nobody comes in. People raised alarm, they cried, they shouted, how can you close the door of a church? I said one of our big problems is indiscipline in this country. And I'm not going to tolerate that indiscipline in the church where I am pastor. And so when I start mass, doors close. A lot of big people came and said, no, you can't do this. You are locking people out of the house of God. And then a lot of big people are not used to being disciplined. They are not used to standing outside when they are late. But go and ask. In that church, people stood outside or drove back home. But you don't enter the church when I have started. I am in another place now, in another chapel, and I insist on the same thing. I say, in my sphere of influence, there are certain things that I don't tolerate. And it doesn't matter who. People came, a lot of big people came, and they were very angry. And I told them, I take responsibility. But here, if you will come here, then this is what we hold. I believe that leaders have a lot of prerogative. And leaders will be answerable to God for a lot of our failures because they have a lot of prerogative. They have the power of coercion, for example. I mean, when you talk about pastors and priests and what we are doing and what we are not doing wrong, one of the problems we have is we don't have the power of coercion. We don't have police. We can't enforce sanctions. It's all moral appeal. But our leaders, our political leaders, have that power. And for me, if they don't use that power well, they will be answerable to God.
Okay, so we'll be rounding up. So what are you going to be telling our leaders? Like you said, all you can do is appeal. So what are you going to be appealing to those who are already in positions of authority and those of us who are the younger ones who are aspiring into position of leadership? What should be their primary focus?
Both serving leaders and aspiring leaders should recognize that leadership is stewardship and that we will all give account for our stewardship. We need to give an account for our stewardship. That Jesus Christ says, to whom much has been given from him, much is expected. Much has been given to our leaders. A lot of prerogatives have been given to them. When people say the followers also, how much has been given to the followers in the slums of Mashaka and One Man Village? How much has been given to them? But a lot has been given to our leaders. And so recognize that you are holding authority in trust. And that what will be required of you will be great. To whom much has been given from him, much will be expected.
I think the point is taking there. As a social comment, I'm sure you can go on and on if I allow you to go on.
Thank you.
If you give Father Usani time, I'm sure you can talk for the next 3 hours on this issue of leadership. I want to thank you so much that you have spent some time with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being here. I will call upon you again. You'll be here to answer us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, let's go for another break now. It's still Good Morning Nigeria.
Your mouth that gives you your best smile, that lets you bite into the best food, hot or cold. That's why your mouth deserves Oral-B Pro Health All-Round Protection. It protects you against bacteria, plaque, and gum problems that could lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your teeth and gives you all-round protection. That's why your mouth deserves Oral-B Pro Health All-Round Protection. And now available in family size.
Mama's cooking. Let's help her. Wait. My mama says before touching food, you should wash your hands with soap. But my hands are clean. I can't see germs, but they're everywhere.
Look under special blue light. To protect against germs, I recommend regularly use soap. Safeguard removes millions of germs, and additionally, it inhibits regrowth of germs that might cause skin rashes for hours.
That is why me, mommy, daddy, and my brother regularly use Safeguard.
Supported by the African Medical Association.
As Nigeria celebrates her 54th independence anniversary, the Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria wishes President Goodluck Jonathan and the government of Nigeria, as well as Nigerians, a hearty and prosperous celebration. We urge Nigerians to unite and support President Goodluck Jonathan's National Transformation Initiative for the Nigeria we desire. Happy 54th Independence Anniversary, Nigeria. Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Our second guest who will be talking about this issue of religious perspective to leadership in Nigeria 54 years after independence is Malam Ibrahim Jega. He's the Executive Secretary, National Mosque, Abuja. We would like to thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for the privilege.
Yeah, Malam Jega, I'm sure you must have been listening to our discussion on the issue of leadership and then the role religious leaders should play, both from the Christian and the Islamic faith. From your view, do you think our religious leaders are doing what is expected of them?
Well, as far as the religious leaders are concerned, they have been doing all that is expected of them by going through rigorous preaching, explaining the word of God as far as leadership is concerned. First, let us understand exactly what leadership is. Leadership is an issue of trust. God Almighty initially placed this trust on the heavens and earth and the mountains. As large, as strong as these three creators are, they declined to take this offer. But man, as weak as he is, as small as he is, took upon himself to take the trust. Not considering the animosity of what trust is, not considering what it involves, and not considering also the resultant punishment that will be meted out to him in the event of failure. And that is what we are suffering for today, the failure of leadership. We have taken this as a trust, and we are not delivering.
So why are we not delivering? Why are the leaders not delivering?
We are not delivering because man, as a representative of God on earth, he has failed to comply with the commands of God, the command of trust, the command of justice and equity in the distribution of resources. Take, for example, once you are a leader, the issue of you looking at a group of people to say they are not your people is out of question. God says in chapter 5, verse 8, that do not allow the enmity between you and people to decide whether you should do justice to them or not. So if you look at the distribution of resources in this country, for a leader to now sit down and think that these resources should not go to this part of the country simply because I feel they are not my people or they are not, they don't love me, is out of question. Once you are a leader, you have no tribe, you have no local government, you have no state. If you are a governor in your state, you should forget the local government from which you came from, because that was an accident of birth. If you are a president of Nigeria, you should forget the state from which you came from. You are virtually representing all the states of the Federation. So the distribution of the resources that you control, that are put on your head as a trust, should be seen to be for all and should be distributed equitably based on the principle of justice.
Now, by your virtue as religious leaders, you're also thrusted with some leadership, and I guess one of your duties would be to bring back erring, whoever errs, you bring it back onto the path of, God, path of justice. What do you think is responsible? If you've been doing vigorous preaching, like you said you've been doing, why then are we not getting result? They seem not to be hearing you.
Well, you see, to be fair to both religions, there are people who are always doing their best, and there are people who are undoing what these are doing at their best level. For example, look at what is happening in this country. religious leaders, amassing wealth to the extent of, somebody having a jet. And to even be involved in controversy to the extent that the followership are questioning the integrity of the leader. And when you talk, for example, I read in the papers, somebody is saying, if you talk against the issue, you are against Christ. Christ did not live that way. Christ lived for the people. And the commandment in Christianity is that you serve the people. You care for them. You show love to them, regardless of whether they are of your ethnic group or of your state. So there are leaders within the two religions that are doing their best to preach love and to preach understanding.
We asked Father Iwosani, who was here, with the way our religious leaders interface with those in government and in authority, do you really think that they still have the moral standing, or they are bold enough now to speak out against injustice, to provide that kind of leadership we expect from our religious institutions?
Well, of course, like I said, there are people who cannot speak because they are equally involved in committing what they are preaching against. And Allah says that you should not talk something and then go against it. Act in accordance with what you preach, and act in accordance with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid down in the glorious Quran, and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also lived to show an example for us. So we still have hope, because there are people who are doing exactly what is contained in the Quran, and of course what is contained in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Now, tied to that hope would be our ability to recruit leaders, the right caliber of leaders, which means going back to the beginning. I don't know what solutions you have if we're going to, put in place to recruit leaders, build them, nurture them to that point where we would say, yes, now we have someone who can deliver.
You see, the issue of leadership is not that delicate as people look at it, but it's an issue of understanding your role. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyati." Every one of us is a shepherd, and he will be asked to account for what has been entrusted to him. Al-Imam, leader, ra'in, is a shepherd. Wa huwa mas'ulun an ra'iyati. He will be called to account for what has been entrusted to him. So when we say imam, it means a leader, whether you are a leader of a local government or a state or the federation. You will definitely be called upon to account for what was entrusted to you. And the next category is you as a person. In your own family, you have to account for how you manage your family. Did you give them the necessary training for them to behave well? Did you bring up your children well? And then the lady who is staying in her husband's house will also account for the way and manner she brought her children. And a servant who is managing the resources of his boss will be asked to account in the way and manner he was able to manage the resources. So these four categories have virtually cut across the entire strata of the society. Nobody can move out of this.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we are all leaders. That is what you are saying in
Absolutely.
essence. And of course, we are all going to be held accountable
Yes.
for whatever. But since it's like there's a consensus that there's problem with leadership right now. For our youth that we keep saying they are the leaders of tomorrow, what should the religious institutions now be doing to inculcate the right values in this young one, so that when they eventually assume the position of leadership, we not in another 50 years still be complaining about leadership?
You see, if you follow this hadith, given 4 categories of leadership, beginning from you as a leader in your office, or as a leader in your country, or as a leader in your state or local government, or in your company. And you inspire the workers, you inspire everybody within that company or within that state or local government or state. Definitely they will follow suit and they'll get the required training expected. And if it comes down to the head of the family or the wife in the house or the person in the business who is under a boss, all these 4 categories, if we work conscientiously and committedly, definitely there will be positive change. Things will not continue in the way we have found ourselves, unless if we fail to stick to the teachings of our religions. And the beautiful thing is that this is not just limited to Islam. It's the same thing in Christianity. Because you are talking of virtues, you are talking of attributes of God. And each leader is a representative of God in his own capacity. And God has attributes of justice, fairness, equity, and love. And of course, peace. So unless we now go and emulate and stand firmly for these attributes of God, we are bound to fail.
Okay, so like from your discussion, we have not heard many people talk about the issue of sanctions. When people err, let there be adequate sanction and punishment. Because you find out that in many of these Western world or the developed countries, no matter who you are, when you are not doing what is expected of you, there are sanctions. But in our country, you find out that the bigger you are, when they call you a big man, when you err or you don't do what you're supposed to do as a leader, we don't apply the sanctions. How do you think, what is your view on this? And do you think if we start applying, many of us will start falling in line and giving the appropriate leadership?
You see, beautiful enough is that the 2 religions, both of them teach justice and fairness. When you are administering justice, you should not be one-sided. You should not be seen to simply like the person upon which you have to pass judgment. And based on that, you now pass judgment either in his favor or against somebody else. You must be just in the real sense of the word. And the same thing when it goes to issue of distribution of resources, amenities, and what have you. Don't deny this simply because you don't like his face, or simply because he is not from your local government, or he is not from your ethnic group. This is what is happening in this country, which is not happening in other countries. There is just issue of equity, justice, and fairness. And once you stick to these principles, all the fears you are fearing will be off.
Well, in the spirit of our desire to get the right leadership in place, what role should the religious institutions be playing in this country?
Well, from the beginning, it has to start from the school, the family. Once the school and the family unite together, share ideas, cross-check what is happening in the house and what is happening in the school, will bring up children who will have the fear of God. Because the fundamental issue there is that people do not fear God. They simply pray in the mosque or appear in the church for the service, listen to the sermon, and get out of the church or of the mosque. And when they go out, they do something else. So if we start from the family and, of course, the school, teach the actual attributes and teachings, values that we are expected to follow, definitely will transform the family, will transform the school, will have transformed citizens of this country. Transformation has to do with religion. transformation is not a vacuum. It's not something in a vacuum. You have to start somewhere. Okay. And you are dealing with human beings.
So before you just finally go, can you just give a word of advice to our leaders? Because every now and then we are complaining. Can you just, what is the most critical thing for a leader to do?
I think the most critical thing to do is to look at leadership as a trust. And that definitely you'll be held accountable, either here or in the hereafter. And you must deliver that trust. Once the trust is given to you, deliver it. This is what leaders call dividends of democracy. So if you are given a mandate, deliver those facilities, those amenities that you promised to make available to the electorate.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ibrahim Jega, Executive Secretary, National Mosque Abuja. We thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
And we hope you have a good day.
Thank you very much.
On the program, we'll take another break, come back and do some other things. Stay with us.
There is an Ebola virus epidemic in some West African countries. The Nigerian government wants you to be aware and watch out against the spread of Ebola in your community. Help keep our country safe. Refer anybody coming into Nigeria from any other West African country to a hospital for proper medical screening. And watch out for severe cases of fever, headaches, diarrhea, chest and abdominal pain, sore throat, cough, red eyes, and bleeding from the eyes, ears, and nose. Protect yourself. Wash your hands regularly with soap and sanitizer. Avoid contact with the blood, urine, feces, or saliva of animals like bats, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, or infected persons. The Ebola virus is deadly. Don't catch it. Don't spread it. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
World number one Novak Djokovic and Maria Sharapova had their day as the China Open concludes. Now Musbao Danwabi is standing by to give us details of this as well as other stories from the world of sports.
Well, welcome. Let's talk sport now. World number one, Novak Djokovic destroyed Tomas Berdych in a lopsided contest to win his 5th China Open crown. Top seed Djokovic took 66 minutes to seal a 6-0, 6-2 win against Berdych.
Game, Djokovic. 2 sets love. 6 love, 6-2.
Congratulations to Novak Djokovic. Please take a picture with the presenter.
And similarly, Maria Sharapova overcame Petra Kvitova 6-4, 2-6, 6-3 in the China Open final to move up to number 2 in the world rankings. Wimbledon champion Kvitova broke her opponents in the very first game, but Sharapova showed greater intensity towards the end to prevail in a contest that lasted 2 hours and 28 minutes. A bit of golf now. Britain's Oliver Wilson head off at Cheerson Park that included Rory McIlroy at the Dunhill Links Champion on Sunday to win a maiden European Tour title and breathe new life into his faltering career. Former Ryder Cup player Wilson has slumped to 792nd in the world rankings, but held his nerve to card a final round of 70 and finish 1 shot clear of McIlroy, Richie Ramsey and Tommy Fleetwood, having begun the day 3 strokes clear of McIlroy and Fleetwood and 4 ahead of Ramsey. He finished with a 17 under par total of 271 win to grab a longer-awaited title, having collected 9 runner-up finishes. And just before we go, French Formula One driver Julie Bianchi remained in hospital till Monday after suffering a severe head injury in a Japanese Grand Prix crash a day earlier. Formula One governing body said the 25-year-old lost control of his Marussia on a wet track on Sunday, traveled across the runoff area and hit the rear of a recovery tractor which was trying to remove a stricken sober. About sports this morning, the program continues shortly.
And now to the foreign scene, where we'll bring you a story of how, after 6 years, Somali forces have retaken the rebel stronghold of Bewa-Rawe with the backing of AU forces stationed in that country. Nnamdi Odipo has details of this and more on the foreign scene.
In Somalia, where the government troops backed by African Union forces have retaken the Al-Shabaab stronghold of Berawi, a key avenue for the financing of the armed group. Al-Shabaab reportedly charged taxes to ship the sail or dock from Berawi port, raising revenues to expound its military campaign. The AU said Al-Shabaab was using the town, which the Al-Qaeda-linked fighters had held for 6 years, as a base to launch attacks on Mogadishu, the capital. Al-Shabaab is fighting to topple Somalia's internationally backed government and regularly launches attacks against state targets, as well as neighboring countries that contribute to the African Union force. And in Hong Kong, returned to work after more than a week of pro-democracy protests that disrupted the Chinese-controlled city, with the protest movement facing a test of its stamina after more clashes with police and pro-Beijing opponents. Some protesters left the Mong Kong area of the city, pulling back from the scene of recent clashes with those who backed the pro-Beijing government. The number of protesters on Monday fell sharply overnight into the hundreds. The protesters remained at the stalemate with the city's leader launched pro-Beijing government, and there was no sign of movement on talks that were proposed to end the standoff. In Brazil, preliminary results indicated that the country is headed for a presidential runoff between its incumbent president, Dilma Rousseff, and Senator Alcir Neves. With some 99% of ballots counted, Rousseff led with 42% of the vote, while Neves followed with 34% and Marina Silva with 21%. Despite the president's lead, some reports say supporters of other candidates were still hoping to hand the reins over to someone new. And last year, 16-year-old Pakistani schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai was the youngest person to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. This year, she's once again in the running for work as an education activist. She's become an internationally recognized symbol of resistance to the Taliban's effort to deny women education and other rights. She rose to fame when she wrote a blog under a pen name about living under Taliban rule. She spoke out against the militant demanding education for girls at a time when the government appeared to be appeasing the hardline Islamists. And finally, a typhoon lashed Japan with terrestrial rain on Monday after killing at least one person and forcing the cancellation of flights, as well as prompting warnings to more than 200,000 people to evacuate their homes before heading out to sea. 3 U.S. servicemen were reportedly swept away by high waves lashing the southwestern island of Okinawa as the typhoon Fanfone approached. The storm brushed past the capital, Tokyo, and by early afternoon was out over the Pacific, leaving behind skies clear enough that Mount Fuji was clearly visible to the southwest. And that's it on the foreign scene. Good morning.
Well, we have just enough time to bring you a dose of entertainment. It is not uncommon to see a multitude of people wearing the same color of attire to event, weddings and the likes. Now, thanks to that thriving culture that we call Ashwebi. On Arts and Entertainment today, Ngozi Chude tells us more about this, as well as its significance to the Nigerian culture.
Hello and welcome. A delight to know you are always our companion on Arts and Entertainment. Today we bring you something that is quite entertaining and educative as well. Omotola Omojola will be our guide on this as she takes us through what I term the culture of Ashwebi. Let's see this.
Nothing characterizes the Nigerian party these days than the colors of the day as seen in Ashwebi. Whether it is for burial, naming or wedding ceremonies, the Ashwebi makes the day in different designs. The beautiful file of a celebrant's friends on his or her day of joy speaks volumes about his or her person. It is a sign of solidarity.
Ashwebi to a Yoruba person is just to know that these people are a group of people. Maybe they can be friends who are putting on Asoebi, but in our own case, this is the family. Usually in our family, when one of us has anything to do, we will rally around by Asoebi so that we can come together as a group and as a family.
While it defines a character at the parties, at some other places, the Asoebi speaks volumes in the pockets of sellers and, of course, the tailors who create designs.
80% of the clothes we made back in Asoebi, you find out that a lot of people right now, they will tell you they don't even have their own clothes again. Because if you are going for if I want to go for your own wedding, now you have your Asoebi. If I am going for another person's wedding, she has her own Asoebi. So mostly people don't even buy clothes again. Most people don't go shopping again because there's always Asoebi for every occasion.
It makes it grow every day. Because it's every day that most people do ceremony. It's like naming ceremony, wedding, and this final burial.
The market is stocked full with different designs. Getting one will be at your choice, or it could just be an event away.
Thank you so much for that. Well, it's part of us and trust Nigerians to make the best of everything. See you next time and make your day count.
Well, thank you, Ngozi. Before we go into the weather, Adrian, do you do Asoebi? You know, that thing can really dig a deep hole into your pocket. You just have to try to be there for your friends and your family. When they call one, you just have to do that.
I guess it's our thing. We do it and we do it with pride. Right now, as we speak, I have a cap waiting to be sewn.
Oh, yeah, lucky it's only a cap for the women. You have to do the wrapper, the blouse, the scarf. Oh, well. And anyway, before we wrap up, it's time to look at the weather details for today. Well, that's our package again this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. And from one thing I want us to take away from the issue we discussed on leadership is that leadership is service. And wherever we are, we should remember that, and we will be held accountable for whatever we made of it. And so, as work resumes tomorrow, after the long break, we'll be here again tomorrow to get you started for the new working week. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the Salah break. I am Antonia Amusu.
And I am Ibrahim Adra. Hope you enjoyed the program as much as we enjoyed delivering it to you this morning. Have a splendid day.